countries that underwent a fruitful national dialogue, justice, have benefited a lot, particularly in restoring or maintaining their national unity. Such countries have also become examples of democracy and development. By the same token, Ethiopia is currently busy at making preparations to hold its national dialogue. And the government of Ethiopia appears to have made bold decisions to hold national dialogue while the country is just grappling with several issues like rebuilding the conflict-affected areas in north and northeast of the country, fully rehabilitating the displaced people in these areas, lowering the high inflation rate, and just mitigating the impact of COVID-19, as well as mitigating the drought in eastern part of the country, and building resilience to political, diplomatic, and economic ties by external forces, particularly of the Western Bloc. Welcome to our weekly roundtable. I'm Sintayo Tamrat with this edition, and in this edition we will focus on the failures and success stories of some African countries regarding the national dialogue. We'll just try to raise some stories from South Africa, Rwanda, Kenya, and others. Thank you for staying with us, and I'm joined here in the studio by Asagid Mulugeta, Editor-in-Chief of EBC English Programs, as well as Ibrahim Sise, Executive Director of African Artists for Peace Initiative. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so as I've mentioned earlier, the Ethiopian government has just taken a bold measure to hold national dialogue, while the country is entangled with lots of internal and external issues, the ones I've just mentioned. So do you think that this government's decision is the right one, timely and significant?
We have a guest here. We gotta give him, Ibrahim should have the first.
So? Okay, first of all, I want to greet our colleague here for hosting us, and also our viewers out there, in the name of Amlak, and also in the name of Allah, and also in the name of our ancestors, for creating the road and the path for us to come here today and talk on this very significant issue. In answering your question directly, I want to start by saying that we have no doubt that there will be peace in Ethiopia. There's no doubt about that. And why is there no doubt? Because we are currently on the right track towards peace building, nation building, and also national development. Because the essence of the peace building process is leading towards nation building and then overall national development. So therefore, the country is on track in terms of bringing the issues of peace and mainstreaming it within the current socio-economic activities of the country. Don't forget that the issues of peace must not be a standalone issue. It must be mainstream in all sectors of the country. So we're on track. What needs to be done now is three things. One, how do we make sure we rally the different constituencies to be on the table? Number one, constituency representation. Number two, how do we make sure we get the affected communities, their voices, their grievances, and also their recommendations and suggestions. And then finally, how do we also make sure we get the elders, the opinion leaders, the common people on the streets that can be able to contribute to us building a culture of peace.
That's really fantastic. Definitely, I have a positive view about this because almost 3 months before the issue of national dialogue, we have heard from Ambassador Redwan Hussein a big move that represented the issue of amending the constitution. Even to the point of amending the constitution, this national dialogue can be done. Even raising the issues of the differing histories of Ethiopia would be one of the contentions of this national dialogue. Okay. But he raised it publicly in one of these interviews with analog, with the Turkish media. So he raised that. This is a way to go. This is a positive affirmation that we can expect from the government. Sure. And if we have heard about this, one of the biggest achievements that we have heard yesterday was the truce and the humanitarian truce which has been proclaimed by the by the government of Ethiopia. Even though it's going to be conditional because it needs to be reciprocated by the terrorist group that is TPLF, accessing humanitarian corridors is a big achievement, especially at the time when we loud about the national dialogue of Ethiopia.
Sure, that paves the way if people there are just trying to feel positive about this national dialogue.
Definitely, because this is a big idea that we can expect from the government, and at this critical juncture, it's high time that we can give priority to humanitarian access in Ethiopia, especially if we talk about reconciliation, if we talk about truce. We need to give access to humanitarian situations, because I remember yesterday there was a MOFA discussion that was by Ambassador Dina Mufti, who stated that he has sent via the government 32 loads of humanitarian access, food and aid, including fuel. But most of it has been returned back because of the conflict. This is something that we need to acknowledge and give back to the truce and reconciliation that we need. One of the positive things that I have heard again from yesterday's discussion was the issue of accepting it from the terrorist side too. Though it has its own limitations, the terrorist media states that we will accept this truce on its own conditions, which is having all the humanitarian access that we need and another dialogue and discussion that we need. Though one of the questions which was not answered was the issue of leaving the territories that they have occupied, especially in the Afar region. Because the government of Ethiopia has came up with a precondition that if they have left the territories that they have occupied in Afar region, this truce and this reconciliation can begin. This is a good move by the government, and I liked it.
Sure. It's really a bold measure by the Ethiopian government just to allow such group that has been just a very much threat for the country as well as the region for such a dialogue and allowing just the truce. Well, that's very nice. And let's move on to my next point, which is just taking some good lessons. These lessons could be weaknesses or some success factors, and there are just a number of factors that must be considered during staging national dialogue, during the preparation and while it is going on, and during the implementation of the results of the national dialogue. So this includes political will of all parties, particularly the government and political elites, public support or the buy-ins and ownership of the process, and external actors' role. Because sometimes just external actors may just grab the agenda.
That's what we have seen in Kenya.
For their own purpose. And also inclusion and participation. Let's just focus on past experiences of national dialogues across Africa. And to begin with Ethiopia, the country has good record in negotiating deals among major political conflicting groups in Sudan as well as South Sudan. And Ethiopia was, Abiy Ahmed was just rewarded for this, much appreciated by the global communities as well. And Ethiopia as a nation was much lauded by the global community. However, it has to be also mentioned that the Ethiopia is not successful with its National Reconciliation and Peace Commission, which was dissolved some 2 months ago without achieving much. So it's just wise for countries like Ethiopia to learn from this failure and not to repeat the same mistakes within the incumbent commission for national dialogue. So in addition, since there is no blueprint for holding such national dialogue, there are also no internationally or just universally accepted principles or fit kind of strategy. We have just to learn from, as African nation, to learn from the failure and success lessons of other African countries. In this regard, Africa has just lots of examples to offer, not only to Africans but also to the world. And South Africa's transition remains the sui generis or the unique sort of national dialogue in the process of transition from the most repressive government apartheid to the democratic regime. So during the transition from apartheid in 1995, the South African government passed the Promotion of National Unity and Reconciliation Act, which paved the way for establishing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission the same year. And this commission is just tasked with establishing an authoritative narrative of human rights abuses during the apartheid season, which is between 1960 and 1994. So one commendable achievement of this commission was the use of amnesty as a powerful tool for as a prize for peace and democracy. By offering amnesty for perpetrators as an exchange for full disclosure of the crimes they committed, the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission hoped to provide the incentive for the criminals to come forward willingly and just confess what they did, the crimes they committed, and who ordered those crimes. And that was what the world appreciated from the South Africa's National Reconciliation and Truth Commission. It has also grabbed international attention for staging public hearing, where both the criminals as well as victims are heard publicly. And this is also a plus that countries like Ethiopia must learn in just trying to seek the truth about what grievances, what disappointments were caused among Ethiopians in different parts of the country to different groups. So while the amnesties did not match the international laws in South Africa, because they are just local to offer such amnesties, and they provided the world a foundation for considering conditional amnesties, where such amnesty is fruitful in seeking truth and just to help the criminals tell the truth. So this is also another lesson that must be taken or considered while holding the national dialogue. And amnesty, the South African case, was a strong, local but powerful instrument employed by the South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission to uncover crimes against humanity during those moments, as well as hold criminals accountable and achieve national reconciliation. We couldn't have seen just South Africa today as it is, somehow democratic and a developed country in Africa. So besides the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission process, it is sought to lay the foundation for a strong democracy. It is just one of the achievements that set the standard in Africa to hold the same process in different parts of African countries. So another most important point that must be mentioned here is that the Commission also recommended institutional reforms to ensure that such crimes never repeated.
Amazingly though, one of the factors that with the South African experience I'm always excited to talk about is the issue of Ubuntu. The issue of Ubuntu, one of the factors that brought them together, that brought solidarity and consensus inside South Africa, is one of the biggest things that everyone should take a lesson from. Consensus has its own issues. For example, the issue of reconciling with the colonizers. After all that they have done with apartheid, after all the massacre, after all the things that we have seen in Sharpeville and Soweto, between 1960 to 1940, 1994, is a big thing to see. But at the same time, they came up with the idea of forgiving each other while forgetting. It's good to forgive someone for those things, especially the atrocities that have been committed. But how, as a person, can somebody who has gone through those atrocities forgive those activities? It's one of the questions that got in my head. This is an issue of contention for everyone.
This is what's made South Africa today's South Africa.
Exactly.
Without that amnesty, without that forgetting of past crimes, South African community could not just achieve their national unity, social cohesion. And we could not see just such South Africa. This is just a lesson that even Ethiopia must learn.
Exactly. And I want to jump in by saying that Ethiopia is a different context. This is because when you check the history of Ethiopia, from past record, you realize that Ethiopia is not only a promised country and a holy land, as we know, and the ancients of civilizations globally, but you also realize that in the next few years, Ethiopia is positioning itself to be one of the most relevant countries in the entire globe. So that comes to a lot of challenges.
Sure.
So what is needed right now is the 3 R's, because Ethiopia is bigger than Ethiopians. You get that? Ethiopia is bigger than Ethiopians. So therefore, we must look towards Ethiopianism. And what is Ethiopianism? Ethiopianism is synonymous to Africanism. You cannot separate the both of them.
Sure.
Because it was Ethiopia that, Kwame Nkrumah came, a lot of African leaders came here to get the knowledge, to get the science, to go back to Africa and liberate the countries. So that is the reason why Africa is in solidarity with Ethiopia. So the first R is relief. What the people need urgently, all the people affected by war, is relief. Second is recovery. We need to recover from what is happening right now. And then thirdly is reconciliation. But in order for that to happen, I want to throw quickly by saying we need peace in order to build peace. Response with violence has never led to building peace in any part of the world. So what does peace stand for? So I'll just give you the acronym of peace. P means people, meaning this current process of national dialogue should be people's-centered. It's not about the politicians, it's not about the leaders, it's about the people. Absolutely. And then we have almost 120 million Ethiopians, so we have to focus on that. And then you also realize that when Rwanda case, Sierra Leone case, and South Africa case, the reason why it was successful, because it was people-centered. Now, the E stands for environmental sustainability. You mentioned how, we are going through the drought and everything that is happening, but you also realize that majority of Africans are farmers. Now, this war happening is affecting livelihoods. The poverty rate has increased. But also, most of the war in Africa are done because of fighting for resources, oil, diamond, you know them. So, we need to take care of our environment. That's what the E stands for. And then the A stands for action for peace. No more talking now, it's time for action. That is the reason why we're having the media. So, what is the role of media for peace? So, we commend you for the great work that you're doing here, using media to champion peace. Second is interfaith dialogue for peace. You've seen what the Ethiopian Interfaith Council is doing, trying to bring all parties together. That is very important. Thirdly is also the issue of using sports for peace. We can be able to use sports to bring people together. And then the last demographic is youth for peace. Because in every armed conflict, young people are the most affected. You got the point, And then C stands for culture. Ethiopia is the most cultured country in the entire world. Check from history to date, anywhere you go to. So, what is the role of indigenous knowledge, indigenous sciences, traditional wisdom? Are we going to our elders to ask them, how can you contribute to this process? For example, you go to Wello, you see interfaith marriage, Christians and Muslims getting married.
True.
What can we copy from Wello and apply to this national dialogue? What are the good practices we can bring from the national level? And then E stands for education for peace. It must be a continuous activity. And one of the ways to do this is making sure we mainstream education in our school curriculum. How do we do that? But also importantly, we also have to make sure we have a national day for peace, national day for dialogue to bring people together. So it seems to me that whereas the commission is on track, a lot needs to be done. In terms of representation, constituency, and then finally, I want to say, when you talk about reconciliation and dialogue, you don't point finger. The idea is we're trying to reconcile the differences. And then we are trying to reconcile differences. First is people will come with their position and their grievances, but the idea is towards reconciliation. And reconciliation leads to what? Nation building, national development. So it has to be nationalistic in nature, but it has to be locally owned, locally led. Has there been a lot of consultation Has all the constituency be consulted? Is everybody on the table?
Sure.
These are the questions we must ask ourselves. But, however, we are very positive that peace is going to prevail in Ethiopia. And then to end this point, I want to say the head of this country is a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Before he won his Nobel Peace Prize, we as African young people, as artists, as young people, we gave him his first Nobel Peace Prize award on the 9th of March 2019.
Okay.
And then in November, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. Why did that happen? Because we already saw that whereas he has good intentions for the country, to develop the country, sometimes the political dynamics and the interest at play is what is making sure the country is not moving forward. So the case of Ethiopia is the issue of direction. That's the only problem. Direction. Where do we go to from here? Is it a federal state? What can we do? What are the mechanisms? So there's no need for Ethiopians and Africans to be emotional. We should be rational and work for the best interests of Ethiopians and the best interests of Africans.
Okay. Well, so we have just tried to see
something to add on his. I'm really glad to meet you, Ibrahim, because you have set up historian kind of view whenever we talk about Ethiopia. He knows a lot about Ethiopia than we know about Ethiopia, and I'm really glad to meet you. But whenever we talk about Ethiopian experience of truth and reconciliation and coming up with this national dialogue issue, the first thing that this Prime Minister came up with is bringing up dissents from outside of Ethiopia to come to Ethiopia, engage in this national dialogue, come to Ethiopia to discuss about Ethiopia, because without Ethiopia there's no discussing point.
Exactly.
The only thing that we talk about is because Ethiopia is here and now. So he brought them here, but things have turned out to be somewhat negative. With all its positives, something has came out to be good. At the same time, we have seen the freedom of some of the opposition party leaders, which is a good move. For example, the freedom which has been given to Skandar Nega, Jawar, and every other political leaders whom are going to be part of the national dialogue, is a good move by the government of Ethiopia. And again, yesterday's decision is a good move, again, giving us a positive affirmation on what to expect up and coming. But whenever we talk about the situation of South Sudan, it's very different because it has three different phases of its connotation. It has grassroots level conversations amongst the different sections. It has its own regional level conversations, and then it goes to the national level conversation, which is something that we can learn as a positive. Because now the major consultatives of this reconciliation process are the elites. I know some of them who represent very much section of Ethiopia. I know, for example, there is Dr. Berglo Akchera, there is Dr. Jacob Arsano, part of the National Dialogue Commission, I mean. So, there is a representation. The issue of inclusivity is one of the questions that we need to answer, because this thing needs to be one of the contentions that brought us peace, because it's not going to be a one fixed situation. I think we need to do it every now and then so that we could get a processed kind of result inside this amazing journey. One of the other things that I like to talk about Kenya is international actors' involvement. The international actors which have been negotiating and mediating in Kenya are the things that brought too many of ramifications, but at the same time, recommendations were too much. They couldn't face on single recommendation that they can fix in a given year or two. So it gave Kenya a good thing after the 2007 post-election conflict that they have seen. They brought reconciliation, that brought truce, but not everything was fixed at that moment. It brought lots of recommendations, but they couldn't do it all because they have too many at the same time. And the other things that I like to talk about is the issue of the participation of the opposition parties. They are mostly conditioned whenever we talk about the national reconciliation and truce.
Okay. So I'm just to stop you here because we are just running out of time.
Okay.
there are just certain weaknesses among the countries just you have mentioned, and you just mentioned that the too much recommendations is one factor. And another factor is, for example, if you see the South African case, the socio-economic effects of apartheid have not just been included within the implementation as well as just dialogue phase. And also, it couldn't just hold individuals and institutions of apartheid that were criminal accountable. And also there were just no comprehensive reparations as promised by the National Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So this Ethiopian or just any other country that needs to have such a dialogue must just consider such things. And these are just the lessons our incumbent National Reconciliation Commission, National Dialogue Commission should focus on. Thank you so much for joining me, Asagid and Sesai.
Thank you very much, boss.
Dear viewers, this has been the conversation with Asagid Mulgita from ABC and Ibrahim Sisay from African Artists Peace Initiative. We have just talked on a lot of issues, particularly on gaining some lessons from African countries regarding the weaknesses and successes of national dialogue, reconciliation, and transitional justice. Thank you for watching us again, and see you another time.